Welcome to Markers and Milestones, the Aftershow, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Kleist. It's August 7th, 2023, and we just had a lovely conversation with Amity Shlaes from the Coolidge Institute. Amanda, what did you think of it?
Well, I loved it, but also I know that it may not be everybody's cup of tea to speak, in that she gave us a history lesson, and some of us, that may not be the way we think about future markers and milestones. So I really appreciated the conversation we had about Calvin Coolidge, because one of the things I appreciated was the way she talked about what were the virtues he held dear in terms of taking care of the country and the states. So I really appreciated her explanation of that. And what we admire, we copy. So I also know that some of our markers and milestones are things that are going to be copied from others. And I appreciated what she showed us.
Yeah. And she also brought up the whole the declamation and all the debate competitions they have there, and she falls in the category of people who talk to me all the time and say homeschoolers should do this, and what they don't realize is we already do it. We have so many networks are already helping people who homeschool to participate in debate and competitions. But I really wanted to highlight her because of two things. One, the sincerity of the limited government that they teach at that institute, as well as they do have substantial scholarships, and they offer a lot of interesting programs, not just an at-home debate, but to be able to go to DC or Vermont all by itself is something interesting our students could do differently. And I appreciated that she pointed out you also could just have a nice field trip to the facilities they have. They're just, so really beautiful. So that was the main thing I want to make sure we emphasize, was that you haven't heard of her before. It's probably because, and you like to debate, it's probably because you've already plugged in. But if you want to expand that opportunity, the Coolidge Institute's a wonderful place to begin.
Well, and additionally, one of the things she's talking about with declamation is learning somebody else's words and saying them. And we love to do that with many things. We repeat words, we repeat songs, we repeat hymns. What we repeat and put in our brain also marks how we'll make decisions in the future. So I really appreciated that. One question we never asked was, how does this make people better Christians and better in their church? And I deliberately didn't ask that this time, because her goal was to highlight Coolidge and his principles in society. But you notice his belief in God and how he is where law is derived from could not be hidden, even when we're talking about a foundation that wouldn't necessarily say, hey, go to church all the time. But it is there in Calvin Coolidge. So I appreciated that glimmer, even that lamp was in his work.
Yeah. I mean, I happen to know that she has a Jewish background, but she's super appreciative of the Judeo-Christian heritage. And you could tell that by the way she described not just Coolidge, but what their goals are at the Institute. So I'm glad you noticed that. So do you have any other comments? Otherwise, we can say good evening.
Well, hey, sounds like a good read if you want to read it. So just so you know, I think it's a good read. And I don't know, in classical conversations, I know they pick out speeches in some of our words aptly spoken to memorize for some of it, but I don't remember there being a Coolidge in there. So if somebody finds a Calvin Coolidge speech and lets me know, I would love to hear about that, because it wasn't one my kids picked in classical conversations to memorize.
Yeah. I don't think we do have them in the words aptly spoken series, so we can look into that if we ever do another edition. The other thing is to point out too, her book, The Forgotten Man, it is thick, and you have got to be interested in economics to get through it. I loved it. I have an anecdote from there I could share, but it was so popular, they actually paid for it to be made into a graphic novel. And that makes it very approachable to describe the Depression, the World War I, World War II, the story she said about Roosevelt, some of the ones about Coolidge are all in that book. So if you don't want to read the original, The Forgotten Man, you can get the comic book, which I almost can't believe I'm saying, except that the comic book is this thick also.
A graphic novel is an art form. Let's just be honest, even though we might not all feel that way, it truly is. So that might be the way some of our high schoolers get interested to get to the big book.
I have no problem with it. I own it and read through it. But a story that's sort of interesting out of The Forgotten Man itself was that during the Depression, and this just shows the research Amity does, during the Depression, the country of Cameroon in the middle of Africa sent to the White House $2.92 because they wanted to help us. She's got all kinds of anecdotes like that in her books. She's just a fabulous author, researcher. And so I'm glad to introduce her as a writer to our students. We'll have to have her come back on and talk specifically about her books.
Yeah, that would be great sometime. So I appreciate you inviting her. It was great to get to meet her in this context. And wow, there's so many wonderful places where we can go for markers and milestones and think more carefully and excitedly about different things in the future as we look at the past and look towards where the Lord's taking us.
Great. Thank you for those words, Amanda. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.